Welcome to Macquarie University's Backpack to Briefcase event. My name is Bruce Mortimer. I'm the Director of Alumni Relations at Macquarie University, and I'll be your MC for this evening's event. I'm delighted that you're all here to join us, but in fact, in addition to you all here in the room with us, we have nearly 100 alumni registered to participate via webinar in countries like China, Hong Kong, Singapore, the US, even Nepal and Tanzania as well. So we're really pleased that this truly is a very international event designed to cater to our recent graduates. So tonight's topic is recruiters recruiting talent. I'm going to introduce to you the panel shortly, and they're going to be able to share their experiences and insights on how to play the recruitment game. And we will be continuing the hospitality following the discussion. There will be more drinks and more food for you to enjoy while you network. And in fact, really, as much as tonight is about learning from our panellists, it's also about you taking away new connections in your Macquarie alumni network. We would like you to be able to say that you've met new people from your profession, new people from other professions that might serve you well in the years to come. I know colleagues were very busy getting you all to, if you didn't have business cards, to sign your name and contact details for some really great prizes for the lucky card draw, which is going to happen after the discussion, including a very generously donated voucher from MGSM, our Graduate School of Management, for a voucher to attend one of their executive education programs. The voucher is to the value of $2,000. So look out for that one later in the evening. Now, in the registration process for this event, we had around 50 alumni submit questions to the discussion, and they've been incorporated into the discussion. Greg will tell you a little bit more about that once we get started. So we won't have time this evening to do an additional Q&A following the discussion, but I'm sure our panellists will be here for a little while at the end, so you can seek them out and have some further discussion. And I am really pleased that I have two colleagues here from the university's Careers and Employment Service. So Julie Doherty sitting down the front here. Julie, if you don't mind just standing up. Julie is the manager of our Careers and Employment Service and is here with another colleague, Vicky George. They're both also going to be here to help you with any questions that you might have about accessing the graduate recruitment market. So to tonight's panel and discussion. Firstly, please welcome our facilitator on the far side there, Greg Smith. Greg is a Bachelor of Economics graduate from Macquarie in 1988. He is the Chief Commercial Officer at the Co-op. He's also an adjunct lecturer at Macquarie's Department of Management and Marketing in our Faculty of Business and Economics. He has served as an executive in residence supporting career and professional development for Macquarie students as well. Please welcome Greg. Sitting next to Greg is another alumnus, Paul Slezak. Paul is a co-founder of a company called Recruitment Loop. Recruitment Loop is an online recruitment platform that's reinventing the way recruitment works by providing employers with a flexible and stress-free recruitment solution. He has nearly 20 years of experience in the recruitment industry, having worked for both an international publicly listed group as well as global niche recruitment businesses. Paul has been a hands-on recruiter, a manager, a trainer, a writer, a blogger, a coach, a mentor, and a regular speaker for the industry across Australia, Asia, Europe, and North America. In fact, those of you who are in the university's Macquarie Alumni LinkedIn group will have read some of his blog posts to that group. He holds a Masters of Arts from Macquarie University. Please welcome Paul. And next to Paul, we have Cherie Thompson. Cherie is the graduate recruitment consultant in people performance and culture at KPMG. Cherie's role at KPMG involves managing the objectives and strategies to attract, review and recruit a range of graduates from a variety of disciplines that best fit KPMG's numerous business units and specialties. Cherie is a very experienced HR and recruitment practitioner, having worked in a number of industries in this field. So please welcome Cherie. And finally, alumnus Archie Petsis is the Senior HR Manager, Australia and New Zealand at International SOS. International SOS is the world's leading medical and travel security services company, helping organisations protect their people across the globe from more than 700 locations in 76 countries. Archie's previous roles include senior positions at Thales Australia, CPA Australia, Lawson Software, the Brooklyn Group and AAPT. Archie has completed a postgraduate diploma in Human Resources Management from the Macquarie Graduate School of Management. Please welcome Archie. I'll now hand over to Greg to facilitate the discussion around recruiters recruiting talent.
Thanks, Bruce. Good evening, everybody. We have 40 minutes to get through a lot of stuff. So what I thought I'd do is just kick straight into these questions, and we can probably mix and mingle afterwards to ask our elite comments to go through the guys here. But the first question I want to pose to you guys is, what do recruiters look for when they're looking at young graduates? What do they look for?
Me first?
Yeah, anybody who wants to look at me first.
I think we've got to be careful here. We shouldn't actually be calling graduates young. Graduates can come in all shapes and sizes. And recruiters will look, whether it's young graduates or anyone doing a career transition or a job application, for what's actually separating them from all the other applications. And it's all the way through every touch point of the recruitment process. What your CV looks like, how you tailor your cover letter for a particular role, how you answer the phone when they do a telephone screen with you, whether you answer the phone when they do a telephone screen with you, and obviously how you then present and get through the interview process, and then how you actually follow up professionally after that. So keeping in mind that the recruitment process is not just the 45-minute interview face-to-face, understanding that you have to make yourself stand out and clearly be different from the multitude of everybody else around you. When I sat in your position at Macquarie Uni, I remember the lecturer on the first day said, look to your left, look to your right, only one of you is going to get a job.
That was Carrick Martin.
Yes, it was.
That was Accounting 101 if
it's
ever
true.
gone through.
What actually makes that happen is that the multitude blend and just have a very generic or vanilla application and CV, and the one that gets through is the one that stands out.
Shireen.
Yeah, well, I completely agree with what you've said, but further to that, we're also looking for the well-rounded candidate. So obviously you do need to stand out. It is quite competitive at the moment for a variety of roles. So you have to make sure that you're, catching the attention of the recruiter, that you're clearly highlighting the key competencies that they're looking for from the outset, and that is your application form. Are you clearly answering the questions that are asked? Or are you just giving a really good summary of who you are in some of the areas that you've studied or what you'd like to be going into? So that attention to detail there. But yeah, we're also looking for what you do outside of your studies, outside of your academia. Have you built the interpersonal skills? Have you had the opportunity to sort of do some problem-solving exercises, whether it's through your sporting activities or your, volunteering? So, are you someone that is a little bit more worldly and well-rounded that could bring some different ways of thinking or some different skill sets and experiences to the role that you're applying for? I think that is something to keep in mind in addition to, that initial application form, when that's only the first step. And then obviously when you're coming into, if you make it to the next stage, which may be a one-on-one interview or an assessment centre type situation, again, how are you going to stand out against the pack? It's making sure that you're genuine to who you are. It's not about just trying to be the loud person or, the leader in the group. We're looking for different types of competencies and dynamics to come into the team. So making sure that you're being genuine to who you are, but also making sure that you're building a great rapport with the assessors and with the recruiters that you're meeting, because we're looking for people that could comfortably fit in with our team, could comfortably go out to our clients and represent the business in the way that it would like to be portrayed. So there's quite a few things to keep in mind as you're going through the process, but they're all into play. Yeah.
Look, I agree with everything that Paul Lashree said, and we need to remember that there is a distinction between two types of recruiters. There's the in-house side, when you're actually dealing directly with an organisation, and there are the recruitment firms that you're actually dealing. And the motivation tends to be a little bit different. One, I completely agree with the fact that what we're trying to shift through is actually the vanilla resumes. They tend to be very similar. I absolutely agree that they have to be tailored. Your letter has to be tailored to the role that you're applying for. Your resume has to be tailored, whether your online profile needs to be tailored, to make sure that actually what you're applying for is relevant, and so is your documentation. And when you actually go and have that conversation, whether it's in an assessment centre type or a one-on-one situation, you actually are bringing out the experiences that you've had. Everyone knows, particularly when you're a recent graduate, and I was there, it wasn't too long ago, believe me, all of a sudden life's gone right past you. You've got 2 kids and married in the suburbs. It won't be long. But the reality is that you need to actually look at what you've done. Everybody knows that the experience is light in the sense that it's only a few years that you've been out, but it is the extra parts that you've done. So if you do the minimum, you're probably going to get the minimum out of it. If you actually put effort into the letter, your extracurricular activities, and how you bring that out into the conversation, and how that portrays to the role that you're applying for, will make a big difference, because people will know that you're actually interested in the position. Why are you interested? And certainly doing that research. There's many occasions I think I've been in interviews where I've actually asked the questions, and I think that what you're getting back is almost like the standard response. I'm really looking for what is it that you're interested in doing and why. And the why is actually a very, is the part of the conversation you want to get to. It's certainly not what. Everyone's there for the same reason.
So Archie, to pick up on that point, what makes the difference between a good covering letter and a bad covering letter?
Sure. I probably have seen more, and certainly my panellists might talk about their experiences, but I've seen plenty of covering letters that have got the previous company's name on there. Okay? And a replace all may not necessarily replace all. Okay, so check it out. Seriously, it's the basic things, and it'll be either grammar, it'll be spelling, but the reality is that you need to be able to articulate what is on your CV, particularly the extracurricular stuff, and certainly we'll talk about later, I think, about GPA averages and all that sort of stuff, but the reality is that what is it that you've done above and beyond, whether it's in your community, whether it's in at the university, outside of literally the subjects that you've studied. And if you, and I'd really encourage you to actually be thinking, what are you interested in, and how do you get involved in that? Because you will have skills that you've learnt. You'll have skills, whether it's leadership, whether it is participation, whether it's planning, whether it's organising something, whether it's in the university, I suppose sporting groups or so forth. Bring that out, and bring that out in your resume and your letter, first of all. And if you know people in an organisation, or you've been referred to by people, I like people to tell me that. Because people don't refer people that they don't like.
Yeah. So how long should this letter be? You guys are talking about a lot of stuff. If I wanted to talk about my life and how things I do, you could get a couple of pages. But seriously, it's got to be relevant. Obviously, it's got to be very pointed. But you need to stand out from the crowd. Yeah, because I don't know how many different recruiters look at, a whole bunch of grads coming out this year. There's a whole spill of, X thousands of people all doing the same course, all trying to rise to the top. How do you make that letter shine? Because it's really important that you actually get that interview. So how do you do it?
I think making it short, sharp and punchy, not too short, not too long. I know that sounds a bit contradictory, but I think it has to be relevant. Whatever you put in there, it needs to capture the attention of the recruiter. It needs to highlight why you've applied, a little bit about who you are and what you've studied, and why this is of interest to you. I don't think that it needs to be a full page, even though it's a cover page or a cover letter, whatever it is that you would like to call it. I think it needs to be enough detail to capture their curiosity, to make them want to learn a little bit more about you, but also highlight in that initial, opening paragraph or two, that you are a high potential, that there's more to you, that we want to sort of click through to your CV, we want to click through to your transcript and learn more about you in that, few seconds that you have to make your first impression.
Okay, so take one step. I'm going to give it on to you, Paul, here for the resume, because I think you've got a lot of ideas about the CV. I think we covered the letter quite well.
Can I say one thing on the covering letter, though? If you tonight have a look at your covering letter, And if you look down the left-hand margin, if every single paragraph starts with the word I, tear up your covering letter now.
Rip it up.
And that also applies to your LinkedIn profile, which is actually becoming so many people's cover letter these days. So just don't say, I do this, I want this, I'm looking for this, I believe I can. You have to approach the letter very differently. Your traits and your attributes and your competencies have to shine. Quote what past bosses have said in their references describing your past performance. Because I've looked at probably 12,000 cover letters, and I would go straight down the left-hand side, and if there was only I put that to the side, and I did not even look at the CV. And this is where my panellists are going to go, yeah, well, here's the agency recruiter. 99% of you in this room will come through agency recruiters at some point.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's just the rule.
Okay.
I think the only thing I'll add to that, and probably more on a generalist way of looking at it, is if you consider, I guess, what I do as a graduate recruiter for KPMG, it's the same application that I'd be receiving over and over again. So as an applicant, you need to be considering the end reader who's going to be receiving this, knowing that they're getting the same questions, knowing that they're going through the same application channel for the same position. How am I going to stand out? Am I customised? Is this unique? And I think through your cover letter, if you are focusing on, I suppose, the motivations of, why you chose your particular area of study, what you've been doing with that during your time at university or in your extracurricular, why this particular company, why this particular division is of interest to you, it will be unique. It will stand out because it's not a cut copy. It's not, we're one of the big four. It's probably not in your best interest to put forward a CV or an application that, as one of you said, it could be replaced with another name, and still be hitting the mark in regards to what what we're asking. But is it generic, or is it showing your motivation and your passion and giving us an insight that this person really has thought about this and knows what they've actually applied for, knows what they're in for. If they're successful, I think that's a key thing to keep in mind as well, that you're demonstrating that you know what you're signing up for, I suppose. It's a good thing.
I'm going to jump to CVs, guys. We've got a lot to do in 40 minutes. What's the difference between a good, a bad, and an ugly CV?
I'll just
And have you seen an example thereof?
I have, and again, like I gave a little bit of homework to looking at your covering letter. If you take out your CV tonight and you take out a stopwatch and let 15 seconds go past and then work out where you're up to in your CV, whether it's a recruiter, agency side, or an internal recruiter or a hiring manager directly, 12 to 15 seconds is what they spend looking at a CV before they decide they're going to give you a call. Now, if they've read your name, your address, your LinkedIn profile, your Skype name, your Twitter handle, your Facebook feed, that's irrelevant. So a bad CV has all of that at the top. A good CV has what Cherie and Archie have been talking about, clearly articulated attributes, competencies, and successes, along with a career objective that's actually tailored to what these guys are looking for. Or if it's coming to an agency, what sorts of things you're looking for. If you do not include a career objective, it's vanilla, it's cut and paste, and it could be going anywhere. I was talking to a candidate actually in North America last week who said, I haven't got time to tailor my career objective. And I said to him, well, then you haven't got time to look for a job. Because if you can't tweak your CV for the specific role that you're looking for, you may as well not even submit.
Yeah.
So what we've talked about in the cover letter also needs to reappear in terms of your executive summary or profile at the top of your document. Because sometimes you upload a cover letter and a CV, one gets lost and one gets through. Some portals don't even let you do a covering letter and a CV. Some want them submitted separately. So assume that one person's going to look at the covering letter and make a decision, and another person's going to look at the CV. So the attributes, the traits, the behaviours, the key competencies and your successes up front with a career objective, and your Twitter feed, your Facebook name, your Skype, your email address, where you live, irrelevant until the bottom of the document. If someone likes what you have in your document based on your qualifications and past experience, they will do everything they can to find you and contact you. Don't worry about that. It doesn't need to be the first 10 seconds because they're not going to go on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I agree. You might disagree on the 12 seconds principle, but I might spend about
Agency
30.
12.
I know,
Agency 12.
agencies are about
Didn't you say 15? Because I took some
yeah,
notes.
might have told me 15.
15 on
I
a
might
good
spend
day.
about 30 seconds, but the reality is it's absolutely true. We will get dozens, if not hundreds of resumes, depending on the role. You have around about 30 seconds to impress someone. Impressing, by the way, doesn't mean it's got to be on pink paper with photos and fonts that I can't read. And some of the fonts are unbelievable that you see because they try to be creative. And look, it's great, but it's just not practical for people to be able to see. If they can't read it, it gets to move on. In terms of the CV, in terms of content, absolutely right, totally agree. The better ones that I see tend to be just a name and a phone number at the top and move straight into it. What's the career objective? What do they want to do? Why do you want to do it? And why is it an interest and so forth? But then when you get into your history, you're looking at your positions, how long you've worked there, that's great. It's all very quick, it's usually one line. What I'm interested in is what have you done? And I'm not interested in actual, when you're writing about it, I'm specifically looking at achievements. And a lot of people will talk about achievements in a way that, particularly, I see them all the time, they say, we did this or we did that. And that comes out even worse in interviews. When people talk about we, they don't talk about themselves or what they've done. The reality is that on the piece of paper, you don't have a lot of time, and stats, by the way, speak volumes. By the way, I don't think I've ever seen a sales resume that ever said I underachieved, by the way. But if I do, I'll actually just hire them on the basis that they were honest. But the reality is that you need to be a little bit very specific. Any role, I'm in HR, and a lot of people tend to think that it's not based on stats. There's a lot of statistics, a lot of value that you create, that you've created, that you've done for any other previous organisation or even in volunteer work, etc. So what are the benefits that you've brought? What are the things that you've actually done that enhanced the organisation that you've worked for in any way? So those achievements are critical. They're usually about 3 or 4 because you're going to highlight those. And if you get to the interview stage, the number of the discussions I'm going to have with you is what is something that you've done that you've been very proud of, that you've achieved, and I want to go into a little bit of detail about that. But what have you learned also from a failure, from something that didn't go so well? And I'll tell you now, how many of you have got a resume that says, I really stuffed up here, but this is what I did to improve or fix it? We don't do that. We don't usually write that in our CVs. But certainly when you get to an interview stage, I want to know some areas of key learning that you've gone through in any stage in your career. Because you know what? We all make mistakes. We all learn from them, but I want to know what process goes through your head when you're doing that.
Team, can I draw you to the next phase of this? I think Sheree, you mentioned before about GPAs. How important is a GPA on a CV nowadays versus creativity and the person?
Okay. Becoming less so, I mean, it's important. We need to be able to review your application and see that you've got the skill set, you've got the knowledge, you've done the studies that would allow you to do the work. But beyond that, it's also looking at what you're doing extracurricular, what you're doing in a volunteering sense, what you're doing with your sporting or, whatever. We're looking for that well-rounded, so what you're doing outside of just your academia. Because we need to make sure that you're someone that could comfortably join a team and work as part of a team, liaise with their manager and bring forward ideas and new ways of thinking as well. We have many different clients. We are a client-facing business, so we're looking for people to join the team that we could see comfortably going out, within their first day or week to speak with our clients and, as I said, represent the business. So GPAs will give us a snapshot into your capabilities and making sure that you've covered off the key components to do the role, but then what more, what else from there?
So do you, I'm sure, gentlemen, you can answer this one. You then say tennis, archery, soccer.
Yeah, I've got my own opinions.
Bushfire fighting.
If you won a Westpac Maths competition in 1994, you don't put that in. But if you've run a charity event, or you've sailed the Sydney to Hobart yacht race, or you've climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, or you've actually run an event for an orphanage or something and raised funds that's going to set you aside. If you just put, I like cooking, movies and reading,
No.
I've asked so many candidates, well, what was the last book you've read? And they go, I don't know. And I say, well, you've got reading as a hobby. It doesn't work.
Photography.
iPhone.
It really needs to be, if you think that there are going to be 2 resumes or 2 CVs on a hiring manager's table with the same qualification, the same work experience that you have, what is going to set you aside to make you get that job? And as Cherie said, it's going to be something, if you've been a captain of a winning sports team, or you went to some form of mini Commonwealth Games or something, that's going to set you aside. But just putting archery or movies or origami, it's not going to do anything. Sorry.
Yeah, something where you're adding value back in some form regarding, depending on the circumstance, will show us that, you do more than just your academia, that you've had exposure to different types of people and situations, and you've had to even subconsciously utilise your leadership skills or your team building skills or your problem solving skills in real life scenarios outside of case studies and group exercises. And I dare say that everybody in this room would be able to provide examples, but it's being able to tap into that and identify that these are the different things that you have undertaken, and how can I communicate that and articulate that in my written application and when I'm in front of an employer.
Have you been a member of SIFE, which I think is now Enactus at Macquarie? Have you been in Golden Key? What role did you play? Put everything down so it leaves no stone unturned, that you've actually given back and contributed, and that can then be directly attributed to some form of leadership trait, a strong team player, or somebody that isn't just hiding in the library doing very well in the exams. Because GPA, as Cherie mentioned, it's not only marks. It's not only marks.
So what if you did hide in the library and you got the 99.9 and you didn't like the sunshine, you weren't a team player outside in team sports, and you were a rocket scientist? How do I then stand out from the crowd? And also, what if I have never ever had another job experience opportunity? How do I get that interview?
I think that one of the challenges that we have, particularly when we're starting off our careers, is to articulate a lot of that on paper. And if you actually don't know what you're good at or don't know how to articulate that, I'd say to you, go and ask somebody else. Yeah. Go and ask somebody, whether it's your lecturer, go and ask a community leader that you're doing some work with. How would you describe me? What are the traits that you think that I could add value to in an organisation? Get the key words, because it is about the key words. And if you don't know how to do it, I certainly had no idea, absolutely no idea. You actually get to a point where you ask somebody else, because you really are looking for someone to reflect it to you, because it's really hard for us to do it for ourselves. Find out, ask somebody, how would you describe me? Ask 10 people, but start writing those words down to be able to articulate for yourself and put your best foot forward. Because it's really hard for us, a lot of us are introverts, where the GPA averages, some of them are the 95s and 99s and so forth, or in terms of, I should say 4s and 5s.
Yes.
But the reality is that absolutely, we are looking for people who are resilient, and people that can go that are persistent, and people that are obviously highly intelligent. But we need you to bring that out, because there's very few roles that you will start off with in an organisation that will say, there you are, you're working on your own. You will work with the team, you will need to work with a leader, there will be expectations that will be set of you, you'll need to be able to deliver on those, and the reality is, coming back to the beginning, what is it that we want from you? We want you to put your best foot forward. If you don't know, ask someone.
Okay, let's transition to the interview stage. So, miraculously, my tennis and my soccer and whatnot, and my GPA of 4.5 has got me through. I'm sitting in the chair. How do I now get to the next stage where they say, Greg, you've got the job? Walk me through.
It's a very open question. I could be here for hours. I think it's really important to build a rapport with the assessor that you're meeting, because they are people that you'd be working alongside if you are successful in a role. So you're using that as an opportunity as well to get an insight, I suppose, into the culture or the type of teams that you'd be looking to join. So you need to make sure that it's something that you could see yourself in, and that goes with the types of companies that you're applying for as well. I think from there, making sure that you're actively listening. You know, a lot of people do, and I see it all the time, so much preparation for the interview. They've written out potential questions, they've written out potential answers, and they've gone there and they just want to get it all out before they forget. It happens all the time. But, you know, we can see where you've put in probably so much preparation that you're not as flexible and fluid with your natural responses, that, you know, you're picking up a keyword and running with it because you go, oh, I've got a great answer to give there, and then, you know, off you go. But really, is that the exact question that's been asked of you? Potentially, in which case go for it, but make sure it comes across naturally. But I think making sure that you're actively listening. Some questions might be double-barreled. It might be, tell me about a time when, and then what did you know, learn from it. Make sure that wherever possible, you're answering every part of the question in a very succinct way, you know, so that the assessor doesn't have to prompt you, or alternatively, you miss out on the chance of sharing, you know, the outcome, or, you know, what worked really well, or potentially, as Archie said, what didn't work so well, but what did you learn from it? So that's a key highlight that I want to sort of share with you, is to actively listen, and yes, put in a little bit of preparation, but make sure that you've got a few, like, enough different examples from the different areas of your life that you'd be able to contribute or like add within when you are answering the questions to highlight, you know, yourself in your strongest light.
What about a mentor? I think we mentioned before, go and talk to people. Are there any people other than, you know, your work colleagues or past employers or university lecturers that you said that you can talk to? Like, obviously the university, particularly Macquarie University, when I was executive residence, I was counselling a couple hundred people to do this, and gave them some insights as to what to look for, how to apply, rather than spraying and praying that resume at the end of the year and thinking about it much more strategically. But are there any career mentors that you've come across in your time? And I know, Paul, you've written a book about it, which I'll tell you all about the name of the book shortly. But
I am a career mentor.
Are there career mentors out there?
Yes, there are. And you start off on campus, absolutely, with the Careers Centre or Career Guidance Counsellors. I'm not sure what they're called these days, but I think it's best to actually go to somebody impartial, who will actually make you think. That's not your mum. It's not your boss, it's not your colleague. And when you think about the name of the careers section in the Sydney Morning Herald, it's my career. It's not my parents' career, it's not my friend's career. You're making this decision. And if you can go and speak to someone who can take you through how to identify your core competencies, how to articulate your attributes, as Cherie said, how to come up with stories that you will tell, not scripted answers, stories that you will incorporate into the interview process. And that could be a 2 or 3 meeting module. You might have to go and see this career counsellor 2 or 3 times. And it's not just about tailoring a CV, it's about how you actually mentally prepare for an interview, so that you don't go and gush all the answers out in a scripted or rehearsed way, and so that you actually can also create some questions of your own to ask the hiring manager or to ask the recruiter. I know as a recruiter of 20 years, I listen to the questions that they ask me during the interview, which will actually reveal where you want your career to go. It's not, is there a Coke machine in the kitchen, or do I get to take Melbourne Cup day off? It's around development. It's around opportunity within an organisation. It's around mentoring the company. It's around, what's the team structure like? What will my boss be like? What are they looking for in a new employee? And a career mentor can help you with that. Your parents can't, your friends can't, your lecturers can't, and neither can your current boss, because they don't want you to go. So I am a strong advocate. I've always had mentors during university and outside. They're out there, find them.
And anybody else? Just before I move on to, I've got many more questions here that I've written down.
So I totally agree. I think as you develop throughout your career, you'll find different people who will mentor you at different stages in your life. So career coaches versus life coaches, there's a lot out there in terms of being able to research. I think it's absolutely perfect for starting from your career centre and developing and growing that. But it is about you being able to see yourself from a very different angle. And that angle, absolutely, I totally agree with Paul. Your parents see you in a way that's clouded, and everyone else will see you in different ways. But from a career perspective, what do you want to get out of it and develop it? You certainly don't want to be sitting at a desk that's punching away, you know, all things day in, day out. What is it that you're trying to achieve, and how do you articulate that? The wonderful thing that I totally absolutely agree is an interview is actually not it's not a robotic exercise, guys. We're not shooting questions and we're not looking for a standard response, and therefore it's a round peg in a round hole. Perfect, it fits. What we're looking for is a story, and we're looking for your story. And the better that you can articulate that, the greater the conversation becomes. It becomes more fluid, it's a natural conversation, it has a wonderful beginning, it has a great middle, we're finding out about each other, you're finding about the organisation. The question that you ask of us as interviewers actually gives us a little bit of insight as to whether or not you've done your research. And it's not questions around, what are you going to do to develop my career for me? Because to me, I tend to find that a little bit selfish, a little bit more around, well, a sense of entitlement, whereas I'm looking for people to ask me, well, what are the programs that we have in place? What have we done that develops our high potential people? And that shows me that you have an aspiration. That's great. That's what I'm looking for. But I'm looking for you to tell me a great story about who you are, what you want out of life, and whether or not I've actually got that opportunity that can actually provide you with that environment to excel. Because not all environments are for people. Currently, I employ people that work as doctors on oil rigs. How many doctors do you think that love working on oil rigs? There's very few, by the way, let me tell you. But they love to be on their own. But it is really very difficult, but that's what we're there for. We're there to help that organisation find the right people in the right environment to actually excel.
One very quick thing around the interview, and I know we were told to turn phones off before tonight started. I was in an interview not long ago. Somebody's phone rang. He said, "Can I answer it?" And I said, "Absolutely. You can answer it outside, but you're not coming back." And you switch off phones, not onto silent, you switch them off. In that hour of your life, you do not need to be contacted. It's undivided attention between hiring manager, internal recruiter, HR, and you. Nothing else should be disturbing you, because the first thing Cherie said was be present to that moment. And a recruiter and a hiring manager can tell straight away if your mind's drifting off somewhere because you're wondering who rang you, it's over.
How many Facebook likes?
Exactly.
It's over. So can I, in the last, we've got a really juicy question at the last one, and I thought then I'll get on to the summary. A lot of people in the audience here are moving into career, and a lot of others are wanting to transition careers. Let's talk about transitioning your career and moving from maybe, an Optus to a medical company. How do you move from a company that goes from a non-traditional background, so your career doesn't go, well, I started as a product manager here and I went to another product manager, I became the marketing manager, and then I became the marketing director, and then I became the CMO. That's, join the dots. How do you then jump around? Because, people are jumping around nowadays. So how do you then, A, put that on your resume, and B, get that job interview?
Sure. Right now is not the answer to say blind luck, is it? It's not that. No,
You can use that one.
Not at all. I do think stepping out of your... so I did it. So my personal experience was I did it. I actually stepped out of HR at a time in my career, and I went into recruitment. And for a lot of people would say about recruitment from a consulting perspective is HR. Well, it's really not. It's actually sales. It's actually going into a very different environment. You are accountable to your clients. You're trying to open a deal, close a deal, and fulfill the deal for that matter. It's actually really, really tough. So I made a conscious decision to step out. And how do you do it? Well, actually, in fact, I built relationships. Yeah. Whilst I was in an organisation, you do need to develop, you need to talk to people, tell people what your goals are, what your aspirations are, and then there will be people that will take a chance with you. And so, but it doesn't happen overnight. And how you articulate that over time and you persist with that conversation is actually what makes a difference. And I think that you need to demonstrate a little bit of your capability, and you demonstrate that in different ways. And for me, my personal experience was actually the fact that I was actually talking to a lot of people in HR. I was actually doing a little bit of work in areas outside of my professional work. I was writing and doing some work for people in my own time, and people then saw that as an opportunity for me to move into somewhere else when it was the right time for me to do it as well. So I didn't just decide, I think I'll just be someone else tomorrow. And in our experience, or personally mine, I get many occasions where I'll probably have people later on in their career saying, I want a career change. I want to actually step down, I want to step back, I want to do 4 days a week. And they've got no plan around that. And it's really tough.
But how do you overcome the recruiting company who's looking for square pegs in square holes?
Yeah.
Because seriously, they're cookie cutting, and you're sending it through, and
Not
I
all-
was this
not
and I
all of
was
us are
that.
cookie cutting. Not all of
But
us.
I'm just throwing it out there because there are so many times where people have very different disparate roles, and they're probably the perfect person for this job. However, let's call it their checkered history has not been there. They're kind of like the wild card.
Yeah.
So how do you overcome the wild card factor?
I think you've got to take a step right back, and if you are working in a marketing role and you say, I think I want to be a vet tomorrow, I mean, there's a whole set of qualifications that need to be obtained in that sense. If you're looking at something that's able to be sought after without formal qualifications, it's about picking the transferable skills and the transferable competencies that you've got and articulating those very, very clearly. So if you know that between working in Willy Wonka's chocolate factory and working at NASA, there are some traits that you can take from leadership or from negotiation or resilience or tenacity or the team, and you highlight those and you've got stories to tell. As Archie said, it's about finding people who you can tell the story to. It's not going to be the recruiters that are going to help you in that instance, because that is cookie cutter.
Correct.
If I get a CV and it says my career objective is to be an astronaut, but right now I'm a chocolate maker, that goes into the pile that I might look at during the Christmas holidays. But if you can actually say, I'm looking to do this, and this is how, and this is why, and can I come and take you out for a coffee, or can I meet with you to talk about your story? Don't think of it as a job interview. It's called informational interviewing. You might need to meet 40 people and tell them that you want to move from the chocolate factory to NASA. And each time you meet with somebody, you ask for 2 more contacts. So suddenly there's 80, and suddenly there's 160. And in between 3 and 6 months of you doing that, somebody is saying to you, hey, I know Shri at KPMG. She might be able to help you. Or Archie at International SOS. I was on a panel with him the other night. You really need to talk to him because he'll get you into NASA that way. So don't apply for the jobs that are out of reach right now. Informational interview your way to those jobs by articulating your stories and your transitional competencies and traits that are going to get you there. It's not about going for a job interview.
I think if I could add to that, I'd say don't put boundaries up for yourself. You might be in one industry and want to move across into something completely different, but kind of take yourself out of that candidate pool just based on the fact that, they probably won't look at me. I'm finding more and more that people, like employers, are looking to diversify their skill sets and their teams because, it is a changing market. Lots of businesses' needs are changing. The way technologies work is changing. We're always looking at how are we going to be ready for the next, phase, the next change, whatever is happening later down the track in a few years' time. So I do think that you are in with an opportunity if you do want to step across into something different, but make sure it's something that is, relevant to your skill set. Yes, I think as Paul said, going from one extreme to another, you might not make the direct hop. But if it's something a little bit of a sidestep or similar transferable skills, you need to think, how am I going to articulate that? So highlight what it is that you're doing now and give really strong examples of where you've been in situations where that skill set has been utilised to show the recruiter that they can have confidence in your abilities and confidence in what it is that you've already undertaken. But I think something to be really mindful of is ask yourself, why am I looking to make that switch? And then for whatever reason, whatever reason there is, make sure that you're articulating that through your applications and through your conversations, that you really know what it is that you're looking to join and articulate why it is that you're looking to join that new division or that new industry. And you can acknowledge the fact that there's some differences there, but also highlight the areas that are similar. You know, you could say something along the lines of, look, I realise I'm not from a professional services background, however, I've regularly had to interact with different student societies and, you know, my professors on campus. You know, I've had to sort of, in my work at the moment, be involved in strategic problem solving. It might be a completely different industry, but it's the same sort of way of thinking and working through scenarios. So identify and acknowledge the differences, but also try to work out ways to bridge the gap so that the recruiter or the employer can see that, you know, they could confidently take a chance on you, and with a bit of time and experience, you'll be up and running.
Okay, so tonight, if we can sort of it's amazing how quickly our 40 minutes is pretty much done. But if I can just cover, what I just wrote down all through this evening was a whole bunch of key words that just popped in. You know, the words relevance, you know, generic as in don't go generic in terms of your CV. You know, tailored approach. The word mentor really popped up a lot. The word added value. The words community really came into it as well. So there's a whole range of topics that we talked about tonight when it came to, you know, being different. You know, standing out in the crowd. But I guess the last sort of few minutes, if we can, each one of you, if I could just draw upon your years of experience and give us and the audience here, because I'll take this one with me as well, is give me one piece of advice that, you know, when we're looking to you know, change our jobs in our recruitment world of dealing in and around the recruiting industry and the recruitment world. How would you know, give me one bit of advice?
In every step of the process, so again, whether it's on a telephone screen call, in a covering letter, during an interview, you need to be able to articulate your ability not to just get the job, but to actually do it and excel in that role. Anybody can have a CV that lists past employers that might be relevant. That's someone's ability to get a job. You've worked in something similar, you can get this. But all of your conversations, all of your written applications, they must convey your ability to excel in that role. And if when you're reading a letter, if you're looking at your CV and you can't answer, does this show my ability to do and excel? Don't submit until you can answer that question.
Thank you. And also, a great book I think you should all write down, 21 Things to Do to Get a New Job. Google it. I'll read it again. 21 Things to Do and Get a New Job is Paul's book.
To get a new job now.
Now. Sorry, I forgot the word now.
To do to get a new job now.
I'd say networking is quite important, making sure that you're building your contacts, you're staying in regular communication with them, because you know, you'll hear about different opportunities, you know, through your networks, or you at least see trends in the market. You might hear of different topics that are being discussed, you know, through your LinkedIn groups that are quite predominant. You might be able to bring that through your application, through your interviews as well, making sure that, you know, you're showing that you do have that business acumen if that's relevant for what you've applied for. I think make sure that you know where you want to go, so don't do the spray and pray approach. Make sure that you're just as much interviewing the company, I suppose, so make sure that you're really considering what sort of company, what sort of culture do I want to be part of, what will fit with my skill set and my preferred working style. So, you know, as we were talking earlier, if you are someone that prefers the data analytics and not to be client facing, that's perfectly fine. You don't need to be going for, you know, every type of role. Make sure it's one that fits with your skill set, fits with your personality, because then once you find what it is that you're looking for, the rest becomes a lot easier. Your application form will be a lot easier because you'll be excited to apply. You'll know what it is that you're wanting to say. You'll know the drivers as to why you're applying and what you're wanting to get out of the program or out of the role. And that in itself will start to naturally customize your application, because you're not having to sit there and think about, oh, what does the company want to hear now, or how am I going to make sure that, you know, I'm answering the questions that they're asking. You've got it already, you know, within you, because it's something that you're passionate about, and that will stand out quite easily as you're going through the process. So that's something to be mindful.
Archie?
I was thinking about that in the sense that you're starting off, and one of the biggest challenges there is articulating really what am I really good at. And your resume is certainly critical, your letters are critical, and we've been talking about that since. But for me, it's about your story and what is that going to be for you. So, you know, being prepared with these are the things that I've done in my short career that have actually been really good, that I've been very proud of. So having something planned in your head to have your story ready, which is, so what is it that I've actually done that's really good, that I'm really proud of? What is there something that I've actually done that, hey, didn't go so well, but that I've learnt along the way, and what are the key learnings out of that? Because when you do come into that interview stage, we're going to have those questions that we're going to find out, but you've got your story right. You've got it in your head and you can articulate it quite nicely. The other thing for me really is, you know, I can't say this enough, it's about resilience and it's about persistence, because that role that you're looking for, whatever that might be, there is no perfect role out there. You've got to start somewhere. And, you know, and wherever you may start, that is an opportunity then to do something to move into the next position and next role for you, which is where your career goal may be. And it doesn't have to be the first cab. You don't have to be the CEO on the first job. It's probably not going to be there, not for all of us. But the reality is that you've got to start somewhere. You've got to get your story straight. You've got to articulate that story, and it's got to be different to everybody else, because it's your story. And when it comes to us, you know, I don't want to be hearing that Mary and Bob are exactly the same people, because they're not. And when you bring that story out in your way, you can really tell. And when you have a great interview, you will know, because you'll walk away feeling that was pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, guys, this has been absolutely brilliant. I've totally learned a lot just by listening to you, just here, and hopefully the questions have been, you know, okay for you guys to sort of put it back there. But I really, you know, again, would like to thank each one of you, and I think I'm going to hand back to Bruce right now to close it up.
Can I ask you to join me in thanking our panellists, Archie Petsis, Cherie Thompson, Paul Slezak and Greg Smith.